good use of your time. There's no way around that. Proverbs 28:19 says, whoever works his land will have plenty of food, plenty of bread. But he who follows worthless pursuits will have plenty of poverty. I think that's interesting. Here's some ways that phrase, worthless pursuits, is translated. The King James, it says vain persons. The New King James says follow frivolity. And frivolous means not having any special purpose or serious purpose or value. The New American Standard says empty pursuits, and the NIV says chasing fantasies. That gives you kind of an idea of what this thing is. So you've got, on the one hand, somebody who's just working his lane. He's doing the long hours of toil of just working, and he's going to have food to eat. On the other hand, there's a temptation to say, who wants to do that? Who wants to pull weeds? Who wants to plow? Who wants to work? That's slow, and that's hot. That's hard work. Maybe there's some quick, easy way instead. And there's a lot of those. There's a danger and it's very attractive, this idea that, I could do this thing instead and, kind of skip ahead to the part where I have what I want without having to put in the effort. But unfortunately, a lot of those end up being worthless pursuits that don't bear fruit in the end. When I was a kid, I remember Dad telling me about, we went to church with somebody who had heard about a invention for a perpetual motion machine. Every now and then these kind of things would come around. Now, scientifically, it can't exist. There's like, you're literally, what we understand anyway is the laws of the universe don't allow for this kind of thing. But every now and then somebody will claim to have invented one. Some people have even set up a little demonstration, and they fooled lots of people. Over the years, another one will come on and somebody will claim that they've made something. And so what they usually do then is they say, don't you want to invest in this? Because it's going to be the next big thing, right? And so this, the guy that we went to church with lost a ton of money in investing in what he thought would be the next big thing. But it turns out it was just a scam, a worthless pursuit. Now, what are some wrong ways of, I skipped over one. This is an important one too. Proverbs 24:27, prepare your work outside, get everything ready for yourself in the field, and after that, build your house. This is one I could have learned from, I could have benefited from. I think this is saying there's a proper sequence. I think this is saying there's a proper sequence of events. That, number one, you got to do the outside work. You got to get out there in the field, work hard, do all that, and then the time will come when you can build a house. Now, the temptation is to kind of skip right ahead into the building the house thing before you've really put the work in to have stuff that's going to sustain you, that's going to have crops that are going to come in the fall, and they're going to provide for you, and you're going to have food to eat. But instead, it's like, imagine you've got time and you're trying to figure out what I want to do, and you're busy kind of making a big, nice place to live in. Meanwhile, there's nothing in the field that's going to feed you. So first, put the work in, and then you can build your house. There's a tendency for young people to want to continue the standard of living that they've become accustomed to. But what you don't realize is that your parents probably didn't start out at the point where you are when you venture out into the world. In the typical way of things, by the time they've gotten to the place where they've raised kids to adulthood, they've finally got on their feet, but you may not remember the years, and you may not have been around for the years when it was really, really lean and times were tough, and you're just barely getting by. So by the time you've kind of come along, then maybe you're used to certain comforts, and then the expectation is, well, I'm just going to cruise right on into adulthood and continue living with all of the things that I was used to, not understanding that sometimes people have to start small, and it takes a long time to become kind of financially secure where you can enjoy those kind of things. So there's a sequence here, and it begins with putting the work in first, and not jumping ahead in that. And that's something I think that we made the mistake of doing. Now, wrong ways. That's what I jumped ahead to. There's a lot of proverbs about the wrong way to get money. So obviously anything that's kind of unethical or immoral or illegal, treasure gained by wickedness do not profit, but righteousness delivers from death. Whoever's greedy for unjust gain troubles his own household. He who hates bribes will live. There's always going to be this temptation to take the easy way. There's, lots and lots, just as they say, money is the root of all kinds of evil, all kinds of trouble. And a lot of that is the pursuit of riches. And then there's this temptation. Hey, here's an opportunity to get some money the wrong way. And unfortunately, that brings trouble on your house. And I'm sure we all know of people and have seen that where a whole household suffers because somebody decided to go after what seemed to be an easy prize, making some money in a way that's not above board, that's not legal, and it caught up with them. That's very, unfortunately, a very common thing. Now, sometimes you think about treasure gained by wickedness. You might imagine some kind of criminal scheme like robbing a bank or whatever. But sometimes it's not nearly that dramatic. For example, Proverbs 11, verse 1 says, "A false balance is an abomination to the Lord, but a just weight is his delight." I think that's an interesting thing because back in the day, to understand what's going on here, when you would go to buy something, it would be weighed out. You still see this, it's still true. Like, for example, even at Walmart, if you buy produce or whatever, you set it on the little scale, it says, set it on the thing and it weighs it and it tells you. And you don't have any way of knowing if that thing is accurate. You really don't. And I remember being a kid and going to the hardware store and they had a scale for weighing nails and stuff. They would scoop and put it on this thing and the little scale would go around like that and you get, 5 pounds of nails or whatever. But again, you just have to trust that scale is accurate because you're about to pay that person by the pound. And so they had scales they had a way of weighing stuff, and it would be really easy to cheat by just having weights that were off a little bit, whether it's for the buying into things or for the selling into things where, it wouldn't be real obvious, but that 5 pounds might be really more like 4.5 pounds. And to the person who's buying 4.5 pounds of nails thinking he paid for 5, he's probably never going to know the difference. But over time, the benefit's going to come. You're ripping people off a little bit all the time. And since that's always a temptation, I assume that it's an age-old thing all the way back to the Proverbs where people would adjust their weights a little bit. It's why you see on gas pumps, of course, that they have a little sticker there where somebody from the state has to go around, maybe I don't know if they're state or federal, but they go around and check those and make sure, because apparently there must have been an issue with that, right? Somebody must have figured out a long time ago a way to kind of adjust the scale. So you're pumping, you pay for 10 gallons of fuel, but maybe it's only 9.5. And how would you even know? How do you know how much fuel you bought? You're trusting the scale is accurate, which means that there's a danger that somebody could tweak it a little bit. And in our case, of course, probably not many of us would have the opportunity, I don't know, but you may not have the opportunity to kind of have an unjust scale in the literal sense. But in a broader sense, this would apply to anything where you have the opportunity to just shade things a little bit and nobody would ever know. Cheat on how much time, if you're billing by the hour, you could cheat on that. If you're reporting your expenses and they're going to pay you back, you could just pad that a little bit. You could add a little here, take a little away there, and nobody would ever know. People are going to trust you. They're going to write that check out. They're going to say, "Oh, really? How much it costs? Okay, here you go." There's an opportunity anytime where there's trust involved to just slightly cheat a little all the time. And that's common, unfortunately. But here's what we know. Nobody may ever catch you, but the Lord knows. He sees that. And it's an abomination in the sight of the Lord when people have these kind of unjust weights where they're constantly cheating people. So the wisdom from above is to work and get wealth the right way. Proverbs 13:1 says, "Wealth gained hastily will dwindle." Isn't that interesting? But whoever gathers little by little will increase it. Now, that's not what a lot of people want to hear because they want to know the shortcut. But if you're looking for the shortcut, you're not going to find it in in the wisdom from above. The wisdom from above is slow and steady and work, and that's how you'll have the money that you need for life. Now, that was about earning money. What about spending money? There's quite a bit of wisdom about spending money. Interestingly, the first proverb that I found on this topic was Proverbs 3, 9 through 10. Honor the Lord with your wealth and with the first fruits of all your produce. Then your barns will be filled with plenty and your vats will be bursting with wine. There needs to be a priority in our spending. So you're going to earn some money. You're going to get out there and work. You're going to get a paycheck. What are you going to do with it? Well, what's the first thing that should pop into our minds? The first thing should be honoring the Lord with the first fruits. That means that he gets the first cut. Now, in the old days, literally, the very first of the fruit there's that first ripe thing or whatever, that belonged to God. The first animal that was born from this goat or this cow, that first one, that belonged to God. God said the first ones are mine. And so it was a principle that the very first thing that comes from your produce or your land, that first one is God's and the rest is yours. And that requires trust, and it requires devotion to God and faith and love to see that, okay, here's the first thing I've got. I'm going to go honor God with this. But what they were told was, if you will honor God, if you will give him the first, he'll bless you with plenty. You'll have what you want. But very often people would cheat, right? This is what you find throughout the scriptures is they didn't want to do that. So they would cheat God, and they would give him something useless, or they'd give him the injured animal, the sick, the lame, the stuff they had no need for. That's not honoring God. But the wisdom here is to honor God by making him first in our mind when we think about how we should use our money. So we should think about setting aside money to use to honor God and to serve him. Another thing that should come to mind when we think about wisdom and finances is paying your debts. Proverbs 3, verse 27, 28 says, do not withhold good from those to whom it is due when it's in your power to do it. Do not say to your neighbor, go, come again tomorrow, I'll give it, when you have it with you. So you owe somebody something, and you could pay them now, but you say, I'll pay tomorrow. The wisdom says, no, you've got it on you. You have the ability to do it now. Pay it now. Pay those in a timely manner. Kind of an interesting way this sort of bit us it was really more of a misunderstanding, I guess, but when Jack was born, we were living in Cookeville, and the hospital billed us for stuff related to Sarah, and then we got some bills related to Jack, because now there was a new person in the world, and he had his own medical bills. That's probably one of the first things he ever had was a medical bill. And, it's just kind of the way it goes. Well, I misunderstood and thought that all this was all going to be part of one thing, insurance-wise and all that. But anyway, I assumed it was being taken care of. But Sarah's bill was taken care of, and Jack had this outstanding bill that was like never paid. I didn't know it. We moved off. Well, so we moved to Alabama. We lived there a little while. Then we moved to Illinois. We lived there a little while. We moved to Texas and lived there. And we found a house we wanted to buy, a little place, put down an offer on it, get down to getting ready to close. And they said, hey, I don't even know how this works, but somehow that hospital caught up with us in Texas and said, you've got a bill you never paid. And we're like, what? I didn't know I had a bill I never paid. How in the world they did that? That's all that title search business and all that, I think. But they found us in Texas, and we paid $200 and something or some crazy thing. Okay, fine, here's your money. But that was a bill that was outstanding that we had never paid. It would have been better just to clear all that up before we left Cookeville. And I didn't remember leaving somebody high and dry on purpose. I think we just misunderstood. But anyway, pay your bills as they come due, and as you're able. Don't put off paying your bills so you can go do something else. That's the wisdom from above. Another thing in the wisdom, and there's a lot of Proverbs about this. I'm going to share with you four Proverbs that talk about being generous. So you've worked, you've farmed, you've done some business, you've done something, you've got some income now. Be generous with that. Lots of Proverbs say this. One gives freely and grows all the richer. Another withholds what he should give and only suffers want. Isn't that interesting? Whoever is generous to the poor lends to the Lord, and he will repay him for his deed. You might think on that earlier point, well, how do we honor God with our wealth? One thing, we have a collection, of course, and we set aside and we use that, for the hopefully doing the Lord's work and glorifying him in that way. But even something like when you give to the poor, that's a way to honor God with your wealth. When you use that to do charitable things to help other people, that is honoring the Lord. And even though that poor man may not have the ability to ever pay you back, and you hopefully wouldn't even expect him to, this says that God considers that a debt that he's going to pay back in a way. It's just a figure of speech. But the Lord is going to repay you for your deed. Whoever has a bountiful eye will be blessed, for he shares his bread with the poor. Again, it's the idea of when you give away, you benefit. It's more blessed to give than to receive. But when you're sharing and giving and sharing to others, you end up being blessed, whereas those people that are kind of miserly and hoard and try to keep it all for themselves, they end up suffering as a result. Verse 28, verse 27, whoever gives to the poor will not want. He who hides his eyes will get many a curse. And again, that's the idea of like, oh, I didn't see that. I don't see that. There's somebody who needs something and you're hoping you can kind of avoid the situation because you don't want to give anything to them. You're going to be the one who will suffer as a result of that. So there's lots of wisdom that says once you've been blessed with wealth, use that in a selfless way to honor God, to give to the poor, to be generous in helping others. God blesses us, and then he expects us to bless others. And then when we do, he'll bless us even more. And that's the way that God works. And there's New Testament verses that say the same thing. All right. Those are kind of the topical things. Earning money the right way and the wrong way, spending money. And let's look at some Proverbs that are some kind of cautions or warnings when it comes to dealing with finances. One of them is, there's a couple of Proverbs that warn about trusting in riches. So Proverbs 11:28 says, whoever trusts in riches will fall, but the righteous will flourish like a green leaf. Now, often in the wisdom literature, you get kind of two sides of a coin. We've seen already that money has its place, that money is like a rich man's strong city. It can provide what we need. So that there is a place for it. The other side of that coin is that you can't put your trust in it. It's not really dependable and reliable. It is an instrument. It's something that's useful that we can, that we need and we can use. But it isn't something that we can put our faith and trust in. Only God we can put our faith and trust in. Money is like this. Do not toil to acquire wealth. Be discerning enough to desist. When your eye lights on it, it is gone, for suddenly it sprouts wings, flying like an eagle toward heaven. It's like a mirage. And that's that warning that we see in the New Testament about those who desire to be rich fall into many snares, into senseless and harmful pains, and bring about trouble on themselves because they're chasing after riches. The wisdom that we've seen so far is how to earn money and then how to use that in a wise way, paying your debts, being generous, so that you'll have what you need. But it really isn't with an eye toward becoming a rich man. And if you start chasing after that, that becomes this thing that just when you think you've got it, it disappears and it flies away, and you won't ever really be able to achieve what it is that you're looking for. Another interesting proverb that one that I think I could have done better about over the years is paying attention. I usually just don't pay attention. But this is an interesting proverb. Proverb 27, 23, and 24. Know well the condition of your flocks, and give attention to your herds, for riches do not last forever, and does a crown endure to all generations? Isn't that an interesting proverb? It's saying, hey, a wise person pays attention. A wise person knows the condition of their flocks. A wise person pays attention to their herds. They don't just take that for granted. Well, they're fine. They're out there somewhere. They'll be all right, because what's going to happen? Maybe It doesn't last forever. So it just requires attention, requires, and so financially, it's good to watch things. It's good to pay attention and to be aware of the state of your affairs and not just to kind of assume that everything is just fine. There's several places, I think 4 different places where this warning, and it's always kind of confused me why so much attention was given to this. And I don't know if it was a bigger problem in the ancient world or what. But it's the problem of basically co-signing for a loan or putting up surety for someone else's debt. There's at least 4 different places where in very strong language, the wisdom from above says, don't do that. I'll share 2 of them with you. Proverbs 6, beginning in verse 1. My son, if you have put up security for your neighbor, if you've given your pledge for a stranger, if you're snared in the words of your mouth, caught in the words of your mouth, then do this, my son, and save yourself. For you have come into the hand of your neighbor. Go, hasten, plead urgently with your neighbor. Give your eyes no sleep, your eyelids no slumber. Save yourself like a gazelle from the hand of the hunter, like a bird from the hand of the fowler. This is dramatic language. Saying, make this priority number 1. If you put up some money for your neighbor or for some stranger, if you've signed yourself as a security for someone else, you make that priority 1 to get out of that arrangement, to get free of that obligation that you've saddled yourself with. Now, when I was thinking, like, why is that something that's so, maybe, and feel free later to, if you have some thoughts about that, maybe you've been bitten really bad by that same thing, and you can say, I'll tell you why. I'll tell you exactly why. It can hurt you. It seems to be implied in this, and in this next proverb kind of spells it out, that you've taken on some obligation that maybe you can't even pay. And that might be the reason why it's such a dangerous thing. Be not one of those who gives pledges, who puts up security for debts. If you have nothing with which to pay, why should your bed be taken from under you? So this almost sounds like, and sometimes this is the case, like somebody's like, hey, would you co-sign, or would you do this, or would you sign for this obligation? And you think, oh yeah, well, that'll be fine. But I think what you need to ask yourself is, if this comes due and they don't pay, is it going to wreck me? Because that's what he's saying. You might be smart and wise, and you're following the Lord's wisdom, and you're doing things the right way, but now your neighbor has a claim on you, and if he's not wise, or if things don't work out for him, your bed's going to be taken out from underneath you, because you've hitched yourself to him. You've yoked yourself financially to someone else. And the wisdom from above says in several places in Proverbs, don't do that. So I think that's interesting. And that would require having an unpleasant conversation where you say to somebody who's asking you, no, I'm not going to do that. And that might be uncomfortable. It might frustrate somebody, but that's what we're encouraged, I think, to do in these Proverbs. Another one that probably should have been higher up on my list of things is the danger of borrowing in general. This is an important proverb, and young people, put this one in your mind. The rich rules over the poor, and the borrower is the slave of the lender. One of the ways that people can jump ahead and have all the things they want right now without having to do all the slow, long, laborious task of working is to just buy it all on credit, to borrow. So that's like, well, I'll pay for that later. You say 12 months to pay for that? I can have that now, and I don't owe anything, and that can be very dangerous. And it's a way to suddenly get everything that you think you want, but you don't really own any of it. Somebody else does, and what they really own is you, because now you've become a slave to all this debt. Maybe that's credit card debt or some other kinds of debts, and it becomes your master, and you signed up for that willingly. So you have the option not to do that, which usually just means foregoing something for the time being and being patient and putting in the time and not not trying to get things before you've worked and saved for it. So that's a good proverb too, I think, to learn from. All right, summing all this up, I think we can see that money is important. It's always been something God's people have had to figure out. Money is part of life. There's no way around it. And God gives us in his word lots of wisdom that will help us when it comes to earning and using money in a way glorifies him and avoiding certain pitfalls. We saw already that there was that thing that said, don't trust in riches. What we can trust in is God, and we can trust in his wisdom. The things that you really want in life, the good things, are going to come by seeking wisdom and making that your priority and seeking the Lord. Blessed is the one who finds wisdom, who gets understanding. For her gain is better than the gain from silver, and her profit better than gold. There's something better even than this big bank account, and that is having a big account of wisdom. She's more precious than jewels. Nothing you desire can compare with her. Long life is in her right hand. In her left hand are riches and honor. Her ways are ways of pleasantness. All her paths are peace. She's a tree of life to those who lay hold of her. Those who hold her fast are called blessed. So this is what we should be pursuing. Above all is God's wisdom. That's part of what we're alluding to doing tonight, is saying, let's take in this wisdom as it relates to financial things. So if we seek for wisdom, it's going to give us those things that we want. When it comes to the material things, the key is learning contentment. I really like this one. Is a little with the fear of the Lord than great treasure and trouble without it. Amen. Better is a dinner of herbs where love is than a fattened ox and hatred with it. Isn't that true? That's true right there. Better to be, Sarah says that herbs are better anyway. But better to have a dinner of herbs, just something small and simple, but have love, than to have stuff in the world and a lot of trouble to go along with it. And so we'll conclude with, I think, this proverb, which kind of sums up the wise way of looking at material things that are a necessity in life. 2 things I ask of you, deny them not to me before I die. The wise man says, remove from me falsehood and lying. Give me neither poverty nor riches. Feed me with the food that's needful for me, lest I be full, if I had the riches, and deny you and say, who is the Lord? That's the danger of having riches. Or if he's in poverty, lest I be poor and steal and profane the name of my God. Jesus, the Son of God, wisdom embodied, would later say, in teaching his people to pray, give us this day our daily bread, which is essentially what this is saying. Just give me what I need. I do need things. I do need food to eat. I do need shelter. I need some things. Give me what I need to get me through the day. I'm not asking for more or less than that. And that's the wisdom here. And if we learn that kind of contentment, to be satisfied with what we need, we know that if we seek God and put his kingdom first, he will provide those things for us. And that really is the ultimate wisdom of God when it comes to food and clothing and those necessities of life. If there's someone here this evening who needs to make something right in your life, of course, it hasn't been that kind of lesson. If you already know what you need to do, and if we can help you, we'd be glad to do so. If not, if you'd like to study more, if there's any way that we can help, just let us know as we stand and sing.